the circular economy and the textile industry. The circular economy is the current policy of the European Union. It should solve both environmental problems and problems related to economic growth. It is relevant for the textile industry. Let me give you some details about textiles. On the one hand, clothing is a basic human need like shelter and food. On the other hand, there is a huge overconsumption of apparel in industrialized countries. Most people buy more clothing than they actually need. As a result, an increasing amount of textiles is disposed of. There is a great variety of fiber materials. One can distinguish between natural and man-made fibers. Natural fibers are generated by nature, such as cotton. Man-made fibers are produced by technical processes. It is important to note that the term man-made refers to the fiber production process, but not to the fiber material. Man-made fibers can consist of natural polymers, for instance, cellulose, but also of synthetic polymers such as polyester or polyamide. Over the last decades, there was a strong increase in fiber production. In 1970, fiber production only amounted to 25 million tons. Currently, fiber production reached almost 100 million tons. This growth is mainly based on two reasons. On the one hand, the per capita consumption is increasing. On the other hand, textiles are a basic human need, and due to a massive population growth, fiber production is also increasing. Both factors together reflect the strong increase in fiber production. We can estimate about 200 million tons within the next 20 years. Cotton production was constant over the last 20 years at around 20 million tons. Whereas over the last decades, the overall growth was mainly based on synthetic polymers, in particular polyester. Fibers are not the final product, but just intermediates. They have to undergo a long and elaborate processing chain. From fiber production, preparation and blending, spinning into yarns, knitting or weaving, dyeing and finishing, and finally tailoring, and in between there is a long transportation until a piece of apparel is in the local retailer's store. All these steps consume a considerable amount of energy and resources. A lot of wastewater and solid waste is generated. The technologies are basically low-tech and are distributed all over the globe, mainly in low-wage countries. The most effective tool to reduce the consumption of resources and energy is waste prevention. This means that the lifespan of apparel and other textile products should be as long as possible. Unfortunately, the opposite takes place in practice. For certain categories of apparel, the lifespan has been tremendously decreasing over the last years. According to the EU waste hierarchy, waste prevention is followed by reuse and recycling. In order to realize reuse and recycling, a separate collection of textiles must take place. Otherwise, end-of-life textiles will be contaminated by dirt and humidity, and any reuse or recycling will be impossible. In some countries like Germany and Austria, a separate collection of end-of-life textiles is already well established. After separate collection of end-of-life textiles, the items have to undergo a sorting process. Reusable items, that means they are not worn and fully functional, can be reused as second-hand clothes. Unfortunately, only about 2 to 3% can be reused in industrial countries. The main fraction is exported into developing and emerging countries. Even if reuse is a favorable option in waste management, the export of second-hand textiles to Africa must be questioned. On the one hand, after a certain period of time, these items will become waste, but there is no proper waste management in the receiving countries. On the other hand, cheap exports of second-hand clothes might destroy the local textile industry. If end-of-life textiles are not feasible for second-hand clothing, the fabric can be used as cleaning and wiping rags. If this option is no longer possible, that means end-of-life textiles are damaged too much, fiber recovery can take place. This means that the textile structure is disintegrated into individual yarns. The reclaimed fibers may undergo a new life cycle. Unfortunately, the fibers get heavily damaged, and usually a mixture of different fiber types and colors is obtained. Another option for recycling is to melt the fibers and to use the polymer for respinning of new fibers. In practice, the so-called bottle-to-fiber process is well established, meaning that PET bottles from beverages are granulated and the material is used for fiber spinning. Finally, feedstock recycling is an option for end-of-life textiles. The polymers are broken down into monomers and are used for the production of new polymers. Also, heavily damaged textiles are feasible for this option. However, this means that the entire textile processing chain has to be undergone once again. Therefore, the saving potential is much lower than for the other options. In conclusion, it can be said that in some European countries, the treatment of end-of-life textiles is already well developed. Nevertheless, it must be admitted that there is still a long way to go towards circular economy. In particular, design for recycling and an increase of the lifespan must be tremendously increased. This needs a cooperation of all stakeholders along the supply chain.